Right, can I just confirm, do we have the live stream on and is it being recorded? I've got the thumbs up. Okay, so I have pleasure in opening the council meeting of the 20th of August 2024 at 6 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance. The City of Vincent would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and to pay our respects to elders past and present. And we also acknowledge that as a council, the City of Vincent has a role in terms of working towards reconciliation and justice for First Nations people. I note that everybody is here, so there are no apologies, and we do not have any approved leave of absence. So we can go straight to the public question time. If I could just get an indication with hands. Are there any of the members public present who wish to address the meeting? Can I get an indication? Yes, we've got people who want to speak. Okay, so if you haven't been to a council meeting before, when you come forward, can you please state your name and the suburb in which you reside. And if you're here to speak to one of the agenda items, can you please say which agenda item it is? Because we will note that, and what will happen is that those items will be brought forward on the agenda and will be the first ones that we speak to. You are timed to 3 minutes, so please be very careful to stick to that timing. And also the meeting's being live streamed, so if you don't want to appear on the live stream at all, please let us know at the beginning of your remarks. And afterwards, a summary of your remarks are going to be included in the minutes. And if there's any responses that are required, that'll be in the agenda of the next council meeting. Okay, so would the first person who wishes to speak like to come forward to the microphone, please?
Okay. Started. Hello, my name's Sally Baker. I live in North Perth. Agenda item 9.2, which is the petrol station. I unfortunately live next door to this proposal, and these days I seem to Google a lot of information about petrol stations, but I did find an interesting fact. In the 1970s, there were more than 25,000 service stations across Australia, and today there are only about 7,000. They were originally small family-owned businesses, and their mechanical workshops served the community. Service was fantastic. Customers would wind down their driver's window asking the guy to check the oil, fill the tank, put air in the tyres, all promptly undertaken whilst you remained in the driver's seat. Like all small businesses, they were eventually taken over or non-viable. The site on Angove Street was one of these, perhaps the last of its kind. But this application proposes a false claim that it is a continuation of what was already there. Well, in my opinion, it's definitely not. Today's petrol station profit margins are slim. The gold mine is in the products sold in the convenience stores. Angove Street has high footfall levels, and I'm guessing here that this is the attraction of the OTR group, near a hotel, near a school, and high density. The OTR group's portfolio includes the national retail chain Smoke Mart and Gift Box, which is tobacco, vapes, and variety goods. The group also holds the licence for 92 quick service restaurants, including Hungry Jack's, Subway, Aporto, Wok in a Box, and Krispy Kreme. All these products supplied at their store. So it's pretty much a nightmare scenario for the street, or we think so, and our community deserves better. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Do we have the next speaker, please? And one of the things I will ask is if you're speaking on an item that has already been spoken on, It would be wonderful if you could just, and you agree with the speaker, please just say, I agree with the previous speaker, and then just add whatever your comments are so that we can keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, I do agree. It's Paul O'Brien from Woodville Street. I do agree with the previous speaker, and I wasn't going to speak, but I realised on the way down here that one should talk about such things. As was covered, not specifically a repetition, I can remember the evening when Kathy Iopolo closed her petrol station, had a closing down sale and a celebration. It was on the 19th, Friday, I think the 19th of November 2021. That's about 9 months ago almost. And I thought what's remarkable is that in that period, nobody has had or is in a position to stop what is simply and clearly an anachronistic, wanted and unwanted enterprise. When Kathy had her little service station, it was a 9 to 5 repairs and occasional fuel sales. Her father before her, he was there. I moved in the 1980s. So I've been there for over 40 years in Woodville Street. Gino Ferro ran his little petrol station in the same way, 5 days a week, and selling petrol as he could and doing what other repairs he could. There were 3 petrol stations in Woodville Street in those days. And I think it was inevitable, as indeed has occurred, that they closed down. That 3 minutes? No. And as I said, the remarkable thing is that this has kept going for such a long period of time. Nobody's been able to say, look, this is out of order. This should not happen. You shouldn't have fossil fuel distributions near schools, near residents, near a gentrified strip. Stop it. And yet here we are. It just keeps going on and on. Well, I think it is time. The people who came here, they weren't locals like the Ferros who were dear neighbours. These people are outsiders, not that that sounds very good for a West Australian to say, but they are outsiders. They have no connection to the community. The community didn't cry out for the service that they want to provide. They don't care about the community. They don't care about the Casson House patrons. They don't care about the school children nearby. They don't care about the residents. There've been no communication and no consultation by those people, despite what appears on their websites about how marvellous they are and how they feel that they're everybody's mate and the future of mankind. This is an opportunistic grab, if you like, by this mob, and they should really be put to bed, told to go on their way. It's as simple as that. And it's, as I say, remarkable that it's amazing, me anyway, that it's gone on for this long, and the consternation it's caused in the community is disproportionate to what's proposed, and it's really something where it's a time for a decision that this, in clear terms, doesn't matter where you're from or how you categorise it, is out of order and ought not occur. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Evening, Mayor, CEO David McLennan, councillors, Leslie Fleury, 79 Sass Ave, Mount Hawthorn. I'd like my comments documented in the minutes of the meeting. I have a large stormwater pipe running through my property, which runs through to Lake Munga. It's a city-owned asset, which the council say they have no record of. The City of Vincent has 105 kilometres of stormwater pipe. However, within the entire area of the City of Vincent, you've chosen one pipe, a length of 34 metres, to UV line at the cost of $57,000. One pipe that has no defects and just happens to be mine. Previously advised to the council, I've had the soil tested for compaction. Tests show the soil has not been compacted. It is likely the soil around my stormwater pipe has not been properly compacted for over 75 years. It seems evident that this soil should be compacted prior to any internal UV lining of the pipes. However, it appears that this essential step is not being followed by the council, which could lead to significant risk, including damage to the pipes and the potential for costly repairs to the pipe. Given the serious financial and structural risks associated with this issue, I'd like to know if the Council will raise and list this important matter for audit with the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee's role in facilitating effective management of financial risks and protecting the city's stormwater drain assets is crucial. By reviewing this matter, the City can determine whether it requires immediate action and ensure the appropriate measures are taken to mitigate any potential future financial losses. Since the pipe on my property was UV lined on the 10th of April 2024, you have advised that there's also 40 other properties affected by stormwater pipes running through their properties. There have been, I would like to know from the 10th of April 2024 until now, 19th of the 8th, 2024, how many pipes have been UV lined. Additionally, I wish to inform you that I've lodged a formal complaint against one of the decision makers of the City of Vincent. I respectfully request that this serious complaint be made available to the Performance Review Panel before any decisions are made regarding their review. I believe it is essential that the panel is fully informed of the complaint before proceeding with their evaluation. Please confirm whether I will be advised of the outcome of the complaint. Can you please advise the regulatory body that oversees the complaint process within the City of Vincent, particularly when it involves a decision maker? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Wayne Bayliss from Daphne Street in North Perth. I agree with Kathy on the continuation of the business as it really isn't, but I'd like to come from another aspect. We're all very lucky that we live in North Perth. You know, we've got a public school that's over 100 years old. We've got a police station that's 100 years old, it's been converted to a use. We have the town hall, which the town of Vincent's done a great job on. We've got the fire station being converted. We've got the old laundry in Ango Street. We've got the Rosemountain Hotel. We've got a bowling alley that's been there for 100 years. And we're going to put a service station in there? Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name's Joanne Willis, and I live at 138th Street, North Perth, our family home since 1941. I'm not opposed to development, but have grave concerns regarding the amount of traffic, such as high-rise apartments, that will generate on Eaton Street. Eaton Street has got a childcare centre, a kindergarten, a children's playground. This will impact on they've changed the rules to 40 kilometres an hour. People didn't do 50 kilometres an hour, so why are they going to do 40? Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, sorry. You need to stand up, otherwise what will happen is I'll close the question time.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity. My name's Nick Hitting, Hitting Urban Planning from Subiaco, item 9.2. This matter is for the proposed improvements to the existing service station in Ango Street, North Perth. Note there's a recommendation for refusal in the agenda papers tonight. However, we do not agree with the reasons set out. Last week I presented and responded to those reasons for refusal, and tonight I'd like to expand on a couple of those points. Firstly, our client has a desire to improve the condition of their property and should be allowed to do so. Our client simply wants to replace the fuel canopy, put some new windows in, paint and clad the exterior walls that are currently in poor condition and currently vandalised, and replace fuel infrastructure. I ask the question of the council, how is this unacceptable? In our view, these relatively simple items being proposed do not warrant the council's refusal and should be approved. The land use approval is already in place, and if the building was in a suitable condition to operate, our client would simply have entered the premises and continued trading. However, the building is in need of some works in order to do so. We've attempted to do this even before the scheme was amended, demonstrating an intent to continue the use. These improvements should not be refused on the basis of a land use matter, as these are not within the scope of the application, which is only for improvement works. Property clearly has existing use rights afforded to it, as set out in legal advice that I previously provided to you. So all we seek the council's approval for tonight are the building improvements that are connected with an already authorised use. We don't agree with the city's administration view on the use rights issue, and based on the advice that we've received, it's clear to us that there are existing use rights. And I hope that the council has carefully considered that. And flowing on from that, the council is reminded that if the application is refused on the basis that the scheme now prohibits the use, our client will have the grounds to seek compensation from the city for injurious affection. I'm not putting this forward as a threat, merely just informing the council as to the effects of decision-making on this issue. I would ask that the council consider this very carefully. The city's very brief response in the reports with the discussion document that has been updated since the briefing session simply suggests that it's unlikely that there could be a claim for compensation. That is not backed up with any legal advice whatsoever, and in my view, is not sufficient for the council to follow on from. I don't have too much time to expand on that further, but we're confident and comfortable on the existing use rights issue, and we'll defend these to the full extent possible. In response to matters raised last week in relation to fuel tanker movements, I circulated a technical note prepared by TransCore, which is a traffic consultant, dealing with traffic generation and fuel tanker movements. And that all is sufficient and works all in accordance with normal requirements. And just lastly, if I could, at this point, I'd like to remind the council that it supported our client's other renovation proposal for a service station in Brisbane Street in 2021, but ask that the council follow through and similarly make decisions on that basis. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So can we have the next speaker, please?
Craig Willis, Woodville Street, speaking about 9.1, the service station, and I'm following Nick because I'm holding that now, and the first page of the application, and I want you all to read it when you actually get the opportunity, and I'm pretty sure you have, but it deals with the 4 lots. The 4 lots is not part of the actual application, but the information that we were given as part of the public process was that this is what we were given. When we go to his second application, which is supposedly the first application, the second page of that, again, deals with 4 lots. So we were basically confused as to what we're actually looking at this proposal. Now, Nick can stand up here and say that it's about use and about this is just making minor adjustments to the actual building. Well, if the use was previously for a service station for the sale of 5 cars, and those cars were basically worked on in a workshop where Kathy was a mechanic, they're going to change that from removing roller doors to putting in windows. So that basically changes the use, and obviously that links into the works that's being proposed. When they did the application for the actual building, in the second application it talks about the 2 blocks. But the picture that they put up for me to stand up and get signatures about this proposal was basically this picture here, which I do have a copy of it, which you all have, which shows the next door block, which is not part of the application. And I know I'm confusing with you, but if you've read the detail of both the one from the 14th of August and the second application, it was incumbent on the applicant to put in the right application and to make his case. In my view, I've read the executive summary. I congratulate the planning group on their work and the leadership from David and the Mayor, and just that this is the wrong application for this important process, and they've basically stuffed it up. And you can read the documents all day long. And thanks for just the wrong application. And this is what we were asked to comment on. So we can only go by the information that the public was asked to comment on. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Do we have a further speaker, please?
Do I just talk? Thank you.
Please say your name and what suburb you're from.
Okay, hello. I'm Ella from North Perth. I'm talking about Agenda 5.2. I'm standing before you today to voice my strong concern regarding the petition Mr. James Walker submitted at the last council meeting. I believe, in his view, it does not reflect the majority of our city community. In my experience of door knocking It doesn't matter which political opinion people have, we agree and unite that this is not an appropriate for the council to take a stand. Many members of our community, including myself and my neighbour, originate from regions of conflict. Our birth countries are currently at war, yet here in Vincent, we stand united and support each other, checking in on each other's families. There's a reason we chose to become Australian citizens. Here in Vincent, we value the peace and we believe in getting along regardless of our background. We want our children to embrace these same values. To achieve this, we need a community where everyone, especially our children, feel safe. As I mentioned in my previous emails, my two daughters and many of their school friends do not feel comfortable walking around North Perth or North Perth Plaza in their school uniform, which identifies their religion. Since October the 7th, there has been a constant police presence at their school, and now, for obvious reasons, the police are in plain clothing. We are witnessing in real time a rise in anti-Semitic incidences here in Perth. It's also telling that more than 6 people who support my petition were afraid to share their names and addresses out of fear of being doxxed, as we've seen happen multiple times in Australia. It benefits no one here to reach out to conflict areas with an imaginary very long matchstick and start local fires by making overseas issues our own. This approach is counterproductive, serves no purpose, and makes it feel unsafe for everyone. We want a well-functioning, peaceful community, and we must ask ourselves what strategies can we apply to create such an environment. Therefore, I strongly urge the Council to focus on core responsibilities which lie within our community. The primary duty is to address the needs, concern and welfare of our residents. Affairs risk diverting our attention and resources away from the pressing issues that directly impact the people of Vincent. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Do we have a next further speaker?
Just going to follow up on Ella's petition. My name's Doram. I'm from North Perth, and I'm also want to strengthen her point about this. The petition that was handed in 5.2 by Mr. James Walker last council meeting. Obviously, this is a polarising issue, and I've seen it in other councils around Australia starting to get adopted. And I've also seen communities, unfortunately, because of this issue, have starting to tear apart. So I'd like to say a little bit of what I think this could, what it could result in from what I've seen from my own personal experience. My sister lives on the East Coast, has got a close friend who's also been, after the council meeting, similar petition that was handed in, like the ones that were handed in last council meeting, that it resulted in a bit of a verbal violence the next day. And like I said, you know, we all have differences of opinion about all sorts of issues, and like everyone here has presented, these are the issues we should be talking about and focused on, which are the local issues, in my opinion, anyway. It is part of living in a diverse community, having different opinions. You get those different voices, and it's certainly important to be able to talk to each other about our differences. But this shouldn't be something that the council needs to get involved in, and neither is any other foreign. And the council shouldn't get involved in any other foreign conflict, really, because as we know, there's no shortage of it these days. And given the nature of the debate around this particular subject and the level of tension that we're already witnessing, this could only add fuel to the fire. And yeah, that's all I've got to say about that.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers who wish to address the meeting?
Good evening to all. My name is Ted Krzyzak. I'm from Mount Hawthorn, and I represent the group Seniors and Disabilities Best Access Group, or SANDBAG. And I wish to address generally, point 9.4, although specifically in relation to the Green Street upgrade, and I know Main Roads has taken it over. We're quite familiar with the history. We have some serious concerns regarding indirect discrimination on certain elements and also safety issues. Now, Sandbag takes a holistic view of disability and discrimination, and we view road safety as being integral because the safer road layout, the more access for people with disabilities and the less of a likelihood that an accident will occur that creates a disability. Now, Main Roads, as I said, have taken over the project, but the two councils involved, Stirling and Vincent, are stakeholders. And I'd like to point out that Main Roads, while they have an expert ability in engineering large highways and freeways, they have less ability or less appreciation of the nuances of local roads. And so Main Roads have little appreciation for the Green Street Scarborough Beach Road intersection and the nuances associated with creating a simple solution as Sandbag has proposed. I will point out that we have emailed all the elected members here about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and we didn't really receive a response on it. But I'd just like to point out some of the issues that we've identified. So there was no direct consultation with people with mobility disability or people with disabilities generally regarding the upgrade, which is one thing. And I note on the Road Safety Council, they don't have a disability member, and neither do they have a true community member, because the community member is the RAC and their interests are motorists. The bus stop that's on Scarborough Beach Road before Birrell Street will have to be removed. And I note there was some references in some communications that it can be moved up the road, but according to Transperth's policy, they don't like bus stops close together, so I can only see it being removed. The works will disrupt accessibility for pedestrians generally, but people with mobility disabilities and seniors even more so. The overall safety of people with disabilities will be lessened as it's putting them in great danger, as it's well known in traffic engineering that roundabouts are inherently dangerous for pedestrians and people with disabilities. Seniors and especially people with mobility and people with visual disabilities are even more vulnerable. I know there have been some modifications made on the Scarborough Beach Road side, sort of Scarborough Beach Road West, in other words, the southern side. But
can you please wrap up your remarks? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would ask the council to have a look at that email, please, and reconsider the Green Street upgrade. And if the council has similar concerns, to approach Main Roads on that same basis.
I will need you to wrap. Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any further speakers who wish to address the meeting?
Hello, Dudley Meyer, Highgate. It's item 10.2, the library policy. And I apologise if this is going to bore people. I don't have any issue with the policy as such. I don't think it's particularly well written. It's more a statement of facts rather than policy, but that's not the important issue for me. The issue is about the process. The last clause of the policy refers to a collection management guide and says that it outlines a criteria for the management of the local history collection, something which I'm quite interested in. I immediately looked at attachment 3 of the report, which is titled Local History Centre Collection Management Policy, and assumed that they inadvertently used the word policy and they meant guide. Attachment 3 is not referenced anywhere in the report, so it seemed to me like a fairly decent assumption. The reality is that attachment 3 is an exact copy of the proposed policy with the title changed to collection management. So the questions become, was attachment 3 intended to be the collection management guide referred to in the policy, and is this another administrative oversight? If not, what is it doing as an attachment? What purpose does it serve? And thirdly, why didn't anyone pick up this question? Pick this up and question it. I've spoken before, and I think you're aware, I have some concerns about a number of reports in recent times I didn't think that have been checked prior to publication. For me, the reality is that there are a number of relatively inexperienced managers who benefit tremendously from having mentors who can assist them with developing according to their potential. Yet they seem to be chucked into the deep end. I think you're doing your young managers a disservice. Council can get involved by rejecting some of these poorly written reports and putting some pressure on the senior management to help the younger up-and-coming managers. Second item is petition 5.2. I support the petition 100%. I think it's pretty sad that members of the community have so little faith in council that to have to move such a petition. I actually have greater confidence in this council, and I don't think you would do such a foolish thing. We elect council to provide services and facilities, not to represent us on social issues or tell us how to think. We can do that for ourselves. The trap for council members is to get caught in the virtue signalling maelstrom that you see some of the councils in the eastern states, inner city councils have got caught into. My experience is that most virtue signalers just stop at that. They parrot what they have heard. They look around for affirmation, but they don't get around to do anything meaningful. They also have a tendency to ignore inconvenient truths. So I just urge the council, stick to your remit because it's causing a lot of angst in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers who wish to address the meeting? Okay. There being no further questions, I'm going to close public question time at 6:31. Please be aware that the items which have been spoken on will be brought forward on the agenda and are going to be discussed first, so you don't have to hang around for the whole meeting unless, of course, you want to, because I'm sure it'll be amazing. And questions that have been raised will likely be picked up by councillors in the course of our discussions. Governance Manager, could you please confirm if any written statements were received?
I can confirm that we received written statements from Paul and Amanda Connell of North Perth in relation to item 9.2, Dudley Meyer of Highgate, Nick Hidding of Subiaco in relation to item 9.2. Where questions are raised and the items aren't determined this evening, a response will be provided in the minutes.
Okay, so I have not received any requests for leave of absence, so just checking with the councillors. Okay, so deputation, we now come to the receiving of petitions, deputations and presentations. A request for deputation has been received from Mr Jimmy Thompson in relation to item 9.3, proposed Charles Hotel Local Development Plan. Could you please come forward, and you have 5 minutes to present.
Thank you. And can I have my slide brought up, please? As mentioned, my name is Jimmy Thompson of North Perth, and this week I just want to continue on from the presentation last week where I talked about the strategic reasons. You get the right slide up?
We won't start the time until we've got the slides up, okay? Okay.
Okay, and if you can just go full screen on that, Control L, you can see it all. Okay, great. So last week we talked about the strategic reasons why it makes sense to create a local mixed-use node here on Charles Street, given that across the City of Vincent, none of our local centres meet Charles Street, which is one of the primary roads that comes through. So I think if I can just talk through across the major moves of this. So this is 1.3 hectares of land that crosses Ellesmere Street. It's 200 metres of frontage of Charles Street. Charles Street's a particularly busy road, and Main Roads controls that quite tightly, so we can't get any crossovers across there. And we've got to allow for some road widenings. But what we can do is create setbacks to allow for landscaping to exist across there and to allow for active frontages across development parcels 1 and 3. So as that turns into Ellesmere, which runs perpendicular to it, that's a 20-metre wide road. So what we want to do there is essentially like a little Angove Street. 20 metres wide is a bit wider than Angove Street. It's closer to Rockaby Road in width. But this is 100 metres of what we want to do as a little high street, essentially. Linking into that is a landscape plaza, which runs north-south. And that's approximately 10% of the total site. The idea is here we're trying to create pedestrian-friendly links through. And a big part of it is also understanding existing context and then anticipating future context. So here we're very deliberately stepping up the massing of these development parcels from 3 stories to 6 stories to 8 stories and then down to 6 stories and 4 stories along Charles Street. Each of these development parcels is 2,000 square metres, so they're not really large-scale developments which you might see in other parts of the world. We're trying to get them to be smaller scale, more boutique developments. So essentially, those images, what they describe is that transition in space between having 3 stories with the 4th floor set back and along Charles Street with 5 stories with then all the upper floors set back from there. So consideration of how these buildings read, how you get the feeling of them, because especially if you look on that Landscape Plaza space, the idea is that that's a very European scale. So 4 to 6 to 8 stories, 13 metres wide through there. So if you've ever been to San Sebastian, you'll get that sense of scale and intimacy. So in terms of parking, essentially main roads won't let us have anything off Charles Street or Ellesmere or Carrington. So it comes off Eaton, but you've got to look at the actual numbers of what this will generate. So in peak hour, we're talking about 270 movements in and out of those 2 crossovers. So the northern one has 77 movements in and out over an hour in peak hour. So that's 1 every 50 seconds, either in or out. So it's, if you imagine us stopping for 50 seconds to wait for the next car, it's quite a while in between movements. It's not going to overload Eden. And that's with the entire development built out. On the lower southern one, we've got 147 movements across that full hour. So that's in and out of that crossover. So essentially 1 every 25 seconds. So that supports the overall holistic approach to this as a local centre, which is trying to do a small scale high street, which is supported by density that can step down into the local community. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, a request for deputation has been received from Mr. Hessam Azvi in relation to item 9.2. Please come forward, and you have 5 minutes to present. And I understand you also have a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just wait till the PowerPoint presentation is up before your time begins.
We good? Someone able to advance the slides? Yeah, great. All right, has the clock started?
Yes.
All right, so I'm Hessam Razavi, Woodville Street, North Perth. I agree with my other residents from the area who've spoken before me, and I disagree with old mate Nick from Nick Hitting Planning for obvious reasons, which I'll elaborate on now. A couple of years ago, almost, some colleagues and I tabled a report which we submitted to this council, some of the members of which remain, outlining the existing evidence on the risks that are associated with living close to a petrol station. And in summary, the existing evidence shows that if you live under 200 to 250 metres close to a petrol station, and particularly if you live under 50 metres within a petrol station, the risks of blood cancers go up significantly in both adults and kids. Studies were from Europe and Asia, and the results were all fairly similar, which raises the level of confidence in these results, that there's likely to be a real concern here, that living close to a petrol station is not a great idea. Can you get the next slide? This sort of health consideration should be taken into account in planning. I'm not an urban planner, but there is a provision in the WA regulations about taking health concerns into account. And also the EPA stipulates guideline of a minimum 200 metre separation distance between 24-hour petrol stations and residential homes and other sensitive land uses. Next slide. Here's 41 to 43 Ango Street, and within 50 metres there's at least 10 sensitive land uses, including my family home. We're the closest residential home. I live there with my wife and 2 little kids. Lived there for almost 20 years. Very happy living next door to Kathy, who was a automotive mechanic. Didn't pump fuel almost ever. There's North Perth Primary, obviously, which is about 36 metres from the site, so under that critical 50 metre radius. There's also a physiotherapist, there's residential apartments, there's cafe strip, you guys know the locale. It all falls within that 50 metre zone. Next slide, please. What are the considerations here? Well, benzene, which is a constituent of petrol. By the way, I should say, part of my work is in giving public health advice to government authorities. So I've done that previously for state and federal bodies. So this is part of what I do for work. So benzene is an established carcinogen, meaning a substance that's capable of causing cancer. That was established in the 1970s. More recently, this data around residential proximity to petrol stations has emerged. It's particularly blood cancers, it's adults and children, 70% increased risk of all cancers amongst children, a doubling of risk in leukemias. That's a conservative estimate. Some studies have showed higher risks. There was one in Portugal that showed a 6-fold increased risk of leukemias among all people, adults and kids, within that 50 metre zone. There was one from Taiwan that showed not just a doubling of risk, but a doubling of death from leukemia for children under 15 when living in areas that have the most dense petrol station presence. So it's studies from all around the world with some pretty grave findings. And this is despite vapour recovery nozzles and lower benzene content in petrol. So despite advances in the industry, the results, most notably in a recent Swiss study, actually showed an increase in risk in Switzerland rather than a decrease, as you'd hope from advances in technology. So it doesn't look like it's abating. Next slide. There's lots of graphs which I could put up. This one from Portugal probably shows it the best. So on the horizontal axis, you've got the distance from the petrol station. And on the vertical axis, you've got the incidence of cancers among local residents. You can see when it gets to the 50 metre mark, suddenly the line shoots upwards, meaning a substantial increase in risk. When you get out to about 200 to 250 metres, the risk drops down to background levels, meaning the same risk as the rest of the community. And that's in line with the EPA's recommendation. That 200 metre rule is there for a reason. Next slide.
8 seconds.
Oh, geez. Okay. The most recent study came out after last year's meeting from Northern Italy. It says the same thing. Final slide.
Weak.
All I want to finish with is, look, there's a thing called the precautionary principle, which means when we're aware of a risk, there's a responsibility to mitigate it for local residents. So please do that for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So a petition from Ella Ben Plek of North Perth containing 32 signatures requesting that the council not receive petitions, requesting action that does not relate to local government matters has been received. A full copy of the petition will be available in the minutes. Now, clause 2.24, petitions in the City of Vincent meeting procedures local law, provides the following options for council on the receipt of a petition. We will confine the presentation to the reading of the petition, which I've just done, and the only motions that can be considered are A, that the petition be received, or B, that the petition be received and a report be prepared, or C, that the petition be received and be referred to a committee for consideration and report, or D, that the petition be received and be dealt with by the council. I move that the petition be received. Do I have a seconder to that proposal? That's seconded by Councillor Castle. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. A second petition has been received from Trent Negus of Mount Lawley containing 16 signatures requesting that the council implement 3-hour parking restrictions at the intersection of Joel Terrace and Mitchell Street. A full copy of the petition will be available in the minutes. So clause 2.24, petitions in the City of Vincent. Meeting procedures local law provides the following options for council on the receipt of petition. We will confine the presentation to the reading of the petition, which I have just done. The only motions that can be considered are A, that the petition be received, or B, that the petition be received and a report be prepared, or C, that the petition be received and be referred to a committee for consideration and report, or D, that the petition be received and be dealt with by the council. And I move A, that the petition be received. Do I have a seconder for that motion? That's seconded Councillor Castle. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we get to the confirmation of minutes, and the proposal is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 23rd of July 2024 be confirmed. Do we have a mover for that motion? So that's moved, Councillor Hallett. Do we have a seconder? So that's seconded, Councillor LaFontaine. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. So I now have some remarks that I would like to put on the record. Councillors may recall that a few months ago I made comments about my concerns about the way that the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Legislation were dealing with responding to a number of concerns from councils about about their rejection of bylaws which were being put forward. The concerns I raised at the time was that even when councils are getting quite clear legal advice in terms of amendments to regulations that we want to be able to put forward, that that advice is being conflicted with at the parliamentary council level, and as a result councils are consistently being told that they have to go back and start again from scratch. The problem with this process is it means that councils end up incurring considerable cost having to do this all over again, which is ultimately borne by the ratepayers, and that is a less than optimal situation. This is not a situation that's limited to Vincent. This is a problem which is occurring to councils right across Western Australia. As I said I would, I raised my concerns directly with the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Legislation, and I also brought my concerns to the attention of WALGA. I have received a reply to say that the committee holds a different view in terms of their capacity to be able to provide early feedback to councils on whether laws are likely to be deemed to be ultra vires or not, and as such would not be looking at providing that early advice. I have subsequently raised this with WALGA again, and we will be meeting to talk about how we can potentially progress this matter, because it isn't actually acceptable if ultimately a decision is going to be made by Parliament to knock back local government proposed laws which have been through diligent legal processes simply because there's a different interpretation without actually enabling that initial feedback in the first instance. So that's a matter which I believe is going to be ongoing and one that we need to be looking at. Why this is a particular issue for me at the moment is because of my concerns about the way that the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Legislation is choosing to treat a number of proposed changes to local laws from a number of councils around our cat laws. And I know this is an issue that that a number of people within the City of Vincent care quite deeply about. And also I'm aware that this is an issue that a number of councillors here also are concerned and needs to be more firmly addressed. So this is obviously a matter which a previous council has debated in October 2023, and the local laws were subsequently gazetted in November 2023. But it is now that we're looking at finally being able to at least implement the changes to the cat laws which have been passed by this council. So one of the things that will be happening is that 5 of Vincent's largest parks are now going to be prohibited to cats as part of the new Animal Amendment local law, and for the first time. And this is going to the local law is more comprehensive. It deals with the management, control and regulation of dogs, cats, poultry, bees and other animals. But importantly, for my purposes tonight, the Vincent has introduced these cat prohibited areas around some of our larger reserves that have a lot of wildlife as well, and that are local nesting places. So I'm very supportive of having these cat prohibited areas because I think it's really important that we ensure that our local cats are themselves safe from health and safety risks. And I note that this is a consistent call that the Cat Haven calls for, is to call for cat containment legislation, if for no other reason, for the welfare of the cat itself. But importantly, it is also essential that we look at ensuring that our local fauna and environment is also able to be better protected. I have also been disappointed to hear that even some local children, and certainly a local neighbour that I'm in contact with, has recently also been attacked by a cat and has actually had to undergo some quite nasty medical treatment in order to be able to address the outcomes of that. So in the same way that we do contain dogs, we really do need to start looking at how we can better contain our cats here in Vincent as well. But the problem has been that as a local government, we have simply not been able to look at determining the full extent of our own laws that we need here in Vincent. That's twofold. Partly it's because there is a difference in opinion about the scope of the authority that exists with local councils to be able to make their own laws. And that is very frustrating, particularly when the legal advice we get is contrary to that which the Committee on Delegated Legislation is operating from. But also there are specific limitations within the Cat Act which need to be, in my opinion, reviewed and ultimately would need to be brought forward by a state government. We're not advocating to say that we have to have uniform cat laws right across the state. I might have a personal view about that being a great idea, but I'm of course not expressing that. But at the very least, local councils should have the capacity to determine themselves what is best for their own residents and for the moggies that reside within our council. So I am hoping we can get some progress on this area, but in the meantime, at least we know that the signs will be going up in the next few months, and residents need to be aware that they need to make sure that if they've got a cat, that they keep them out of our largest parks because they are no longer able to roam in there. Thank you. CEO, could you please read any declarations of interest?
Through you, Mayors, I'm on the declarations of interest as per the agenda. as follows. First from Councillor Wolf, which is an impartiality interest in relation to item 5.2, the Ango Street Service Station proposal. The extent of the interest being that Councillor Wolf is a former member of the Stop the Station group. Councillor Castle declared an impartiality interest in relation to item 5.1, 293 and 295 Oxford Street. The extent of the interest is that Councillor Castle is friends with one of the landowners of this property, and that's all received 9.1. Thanks.
Are there any further declarations that anyone wishes to make now? Okay, so I'm just going to work out the order. The CEO wishes to declare a financial interest.
Through Maison, just to note that I would have a financial interest in the item 7.1, which is the annual CEO performance review and KPIs for next financial year.
Okay, so the items which are the subject of a question, comment or deputation are 9.2, Ango Street, North Perth, then 10.2, advertising of the new amended policy, library and local history collection policy, then number 3, 9.3, proposed Charles Hotel local development plan. Decisions that require an absolute majority are 9.6. I'm sorry, I've been misled. So apparently 9.6 does not require that. So 17.1, annual CEO performance review. And 12.1, outcome of advertising and adoption of council members' CPD policy. Okay, so we've already got the ones which I've declared. There are no proximity or financial interests except for the financial interest of the CEO in relation to 17.1. So, Councillor Warner, which items do you wish to speak to that are not already listed?
I don't have any more to add to that, thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
None, thank you, Mayor Simon.
Councillor LaFontaine.
None, thank you, Mayor Simon.
Councillor Castle. Okay. Councillor Greer. Oh, up there. Councillor Alexander. Councillor Wolf. Councillor Hallett. Okay. All right. So I'll just go to the items that are going to be passed on block.
Confirming the following items will be moved on block. Item 9.1, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, 10.1, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3 and 12.2.
Okay, so the proposed, sorry, Councillor Castle.
Sorry, Mayor, I think 9.4 was raised in the gallery.
Okay. I beg your pardon, you're right. It was because it wasn't made reference to. Okay. So we'll take that one out. So Governance Manager, do you want to just mention that again, minus the 9.4?
Okay, the following items will be moved on block. 9.1, 9.5, 9.6, 10.1, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 12.2.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a mover that they be moved on block? That's moved Councillor Castle. Do you have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Wolf. Okay, so all those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get to the first item, which is 9.2, which is numbers 41 to 43, Angove Street, North Perth, alterations and additions to the service station. In order to discuss this, is there someone who would like to move this matter? Moved Councillor Wolf. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Castle. Councillor Wolf, would you like to speak to this matter?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a few comments. I support all of the report's recommendations. I'm convinced that it's not been demonstrated that the proposal holds continuous use rights, with the site having been fenced off since 2021, with there having been no sale of the business and the previous dangerous goods licence for the site having ceased. The applicant suggests that this is a bit of work to keep the site running as it used to. In my view, the report correctly notes, however, that the proposed works are so different from the former approval that they would enable operation of an entirely new service station. And as we know, a new service station would be a prohibited use in this zone under our local planning scheme. To me, I'm also convinced that the built form does not respond to the desired context of Angove Street, and it's inconsistent with the city's built form policy. The report notes that the proposal fails to provide acceptable outcomes across a range of different measures around amenity, landscaping, health risk, traffic safety, to name a few. But I just wanted to pick up on some comments around health, to which we must give due regard as per the local planning scheme regulations, as we heard from the public gallery. So we heard tonight from Dr. Razavi that the Environmental Protection Authority recommends a separation distance of 200 metres between petrol stations and sensitive land uses because of this increased cancer risk. There are homes within 5 metres of this site, and as we heard, more than 10 sensitive uses within the 200 metre buffer, and that includes hospitality venues, shops, a church, a residential care home, a playgroup, a daycare and a primary school. So to take this out of planning speak for a minute, these aren't just sensitive land uses. These are City of Vincent's residents, our visitors, our children, our elderly and our vulnerable people. Increased cancer risk should not be a consequence of where we live, where we work or where our children go to school. And the planning framework specifically enables us to prevent this highly predictable health outcome. Moving on, I do support investigating the contamination status of the site, particularly given the lack of visibility of the level of risk to the community and those sensitive land uses nearby. I want to thank administration for acting on my request to include a recommendation also around securing the site. Thank you for that. The community has experienced violence, vandalism, drug use, disturbances and graffiti and continue to make regular complaints to WA Police. Residents shouldn't have to choose between a poor planning outcome or antisocial behaviour, so I sincerely hope that the landowner acts swiftly to responsibly secure the site. Lastly, consultation feedback is a factor to which we need to have due regard under the regulations. So thank you to all the community members who've come out tonight to have your say. With 263 submissions, 97% objections, the community very clearly feels that this application is inconsistent with the planning framework, as well as their expectations for the future of North Perth. Thank you.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wolf. I concur with all of those statements, so I can probably be a bit briefer than I originally planned to be. Before I do give some comments, I did want to ask a question of administration. Since the briefing, we have council's been advised about some legal advice that the administration sought in response to the legal advice from the applicant. I'm just wondering if you could give us an outline of that.
Through you, Mayor Simon, we can. So following the briefing session last week, administration sought legal advice in response to the applicant's claims about the potential for a claim for compensation if the application were to be refused. The legal advice essentially confirmed the advice that administration had provided through the briefing notes, in that the instances where compensation could be sought really arise from a change in a planning scheme. And that's where that change prohibits a non-conforming use from being able to continue. That is a different circumstance to what this application is dealing with, in that the city's local planning scheme explicitly contains provisions that allow non-conforming uses to continue. Administration's recommendation is that it hasn't been demonstrated that there are non-conforming use rights, so discretion shouldn't be exercised in this instance.
Thank you. And look, that forms the basis of my decision here. I am supportive of the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. Ultimately, for me, what it comes down to is that the applicant has not demonstrated that they have existing use rights of the subject site that's consistent with the 2002 approval. The particular things that I've given weight to in determining that is the fact that the business ceased operations and was fenced off since December 2021, that the Bowsers have been removed, and that the operator has let the licence for the dangerous goods lapse. I don't believe this indicates an intention to continue, and I don't believe that the applicant has satisfied the requirements of demonstrating existing use rights. As Councillor Wolf has said, there's many other aspects that council can have consideration in relation to this, into this particular application, not least of which is the risk to human health and safety in the area and the sensitive uses that surround the applicant's site. I also want to acknowledge the community. This has been a very organised and consistent position that the community has taken. I don't think anyone on council has any doubt how our community of North Perth feel, and I commend you for that in how you've presented yourself at council, and that's certainly something that I have taken note of and taken into consideration in my decision.
Would any councillors like to speak on this matter? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Xamon. And I also want to pick up where Councillor Castle left off in a deep recognition of the community working together on this campaign. It's over many times, many conversations, and what I have deeply appreciated about it is your vision for North Perth as a community and what you want our community of Vincent to look like and what we value. So thank you for working together to put that vision forward. Before I talk more about things I have taken into account, I did have a question. We did receive since the briefing last week, a technical note about the fuel tanker movement, and I was just wondering if administration had any comments around the technical note that was received and the ability of trucks to move in and out of that particular area.
Through you, Mayor Xamon, yes, so administration received that late this afternoon, noting that it was dated today. We haven't had time to do, I guess, a full review of that, but I guess for a high level review of the information, there does seem some issues that would need to be worked through, both in terms of the swept path movements, but also the assumptions around the traffic impact.
Excellent, thank you for that. Personally, in coming to this decision, I'm deeply concerned about the impact on our schools and the residences very close by to the petrol station. I did come with a long list of the acute and chronic health conditions and the impact of benzene on blood cancers, but I don't need to do that now. We've had an excellent presentation from the community, so thank you for that aspect. I have also been deeply concerned to learn about the likelihood of the tank still being underground and the impact that will have on the groundwater contamination, and really support the recommendation to follow that up. So through reading the report, speaking to our community, to me, there isn't evidence of the continuous use, and the application clearly is not for the same that was approved in the early 2000s. So I'll be seeking to support administration's recommendation today. Thank you.
Would any further councillors like to speak? Councillor Warner.
Thank you, Mayor Xamon. There are many different discussion topics that we can go down on this particular issue, but for me the argument really centres on the concept of continuous use. Sorry about the feedback there. OTR asserts that this application is intended to modify and enhance the existing development so that the new owners can resume operating a service station at a location where one has existed for decades. However, this interpretation of continuance of use seems overly simplistic and unrealistic to me. OTR appears to be the only party holding this particular view. All the other agencies, as well as the community that I am here to represent, seem to strongly disagree. And for the record, a report that was provided to us just this afternoon from the applicant says that the site is presently unoccupied, which to me would ascertain it's not being used continuously. I just wanted to also mention the Department of Health opposing the non-conforming use due to its proximity to existing residential and commercial areas. The proposal falls outside the EPA's recommendations, does not meet the recommended buffer zone, and would necessitate excavation to remove old fuel tanks, which would potentially disturb and remobilise soil and groundwater contamination. And with reference to those fuel tanks, the current dangerous goods licence from the Department of Energy, Mines, Industry Regulation and Safety has expired, once again not indicating continuous of use. Design Review Panel supports only 2 of the 10 principles it was tasked with assessing. It notes the colour and context would negatively impact the streetscape, the placement of bowsers near parking limits functionality, and the proposal does not contribute to the community and removes passive surveillance of the right-of-way and of Woodville Street. I believe the administration summed it up well by stating that while there is an existing approval for a service station on this site, the proposed works would not strictly adhere to it. This is because the changes would alter the function and the activities compared to the 2002 approval. Rather than continuing the 2002 approval, the current application would be fundamentally different. This is not a continuance of use, and I support administration's recommendation to refuse this application. Thank you.
Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Okay, I'd like to make some comments in relation to this item. I also very much support the recommendation from administration to refuse this application, and I note the countering legal advice that the council has received in relation to the matter of compensation, and so that does not necessarily need to be an issue for our consideration, because there is an alternative argument as to whether compensation is actually permissible or not. I want to express my disappointment at the proponent for continuing to bring this matter back to council, and when it's so clear that the council is not supportive, but also that there is no support from within, or very, very little support from within the community for this to proceed. I echo the concerns by Councillor Wolf that for those few people who have indicated that they are supportive of this proceeding, it has been on the basis of wanting to see the antisocial behaviour that the derelict property has been attracting, not because they are supportive of wanting to have a petrol station at that site as such. I do note that if the proponent wanted to look at an alternative proposal that could look at increasing residential options and indeed have a mixed commercial residential component, that is something which would be welcomed by the community, and also they would probably make a fair bit of money, because it's a very popular strip, cafe strip. It's highly desirable. It's where people want to live, and I would like the proponent to think about whether there are perhaps better opportunities for them to make a dollar that would be more in fitting with what is envisaged for that part of our community. I also reflect on the comments that were made by the proponent making comparisons with the OTR, which was opened up in Highgate. I feel I can speak to that as a local resident of that precinct, and noting that that OTR has actually become my local petrol station that I now use. I note that there weren't
the sorts of concerns raised in the establishment of that site, as has been raised within North Perth, not least of which because that area is completely different, being directly opposite HBF Stadium and also next to commercial precincts from the one that is being proposed here in North Perth. So it is evidence that communities will support the establishment of these sorts of facilities where they are appropriately located. And the problem here is that this is not the appropriate location for this service. So I do support, as I said, the recommendation, the considered and thoughtful recommendation put forward by the administration. And it's my fervent hope that we're not going to keep having to revisit this, the matter of the petrol station in various different configurations over and over and over again, because to consistently have to address this is actually an extremely poor use of our time and also of residents and ratepayers' money. Councillor Wolf, would you like to conclude your remarks?
I would. Thank you, Ms. Amon. I completely concur with your comments around your disappointment in the proponent continuing to bring this matter back. And that's not only in light of the drain of resources from council and the community, but their consistent and continuing overwhelming objection to this matter. I did just want to wrap up debate by acknowledging that there'd been some assertions in the applicant's written material that the recommended refusal had been based primarily on things like landscaping, or that the council might be swayed by community arguments that aren't based on proper planning considerations. But as we've heard in the debate tonight, there are a wide range of technical planning reasons that councillors are taking into account when coming to their decision. So when you bring it back to the planning framework, no matter how you look at it, this proposal is simply not approvable.
Okay, so I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So now I'll move on to 10.2, advertising of new amended policy, library and local history collection policy. Do I have a mover for this proposal? Moved, Councillor Hallett. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Wolf. Councillor Hallett, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if admin would like to respond to that attachment 3 query from the public gallery.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Yes, attachment 3, the 3 attachments that should be online are still within our Info Council software that we pull the agenda together. It was a marked up version of the draft policy, a copy of the existing policy, and then an unmarked up copy of the policy without markup. That hasn't the markup hasn't translated through into the publication. So essentially that is what the attachments are. The document referred to in the draft policy, which is the collection management guidelines, they're in draft form. They'll be finalised once feedback's received through the advertising of the policy, which is the higher overarching document. The management guidelines are based on state library guidelines and then adapted to our local collection arrangements.
Thank you. I'm comfortable to support the recommendation. This is going out to community comment, and the substantive policy is there, and I welcome and encourage people to engage with their local library and the facilities that we provide.
Councillor Wolf, do you wish to say anything? Does any other councillor wish to speak to this matter? Councillor Hallett, do you have anything further to say? Okay, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so the next matter is 9.4 annual review 2023-24, accessible city strategy, thriving places strategy, and arts plan. Do I have a mover for this matter? Moved, Councillor Wolf. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greer. Councillor Wolf, would you like to speak to this matter?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to ask a question of what we heard in the public gallery, please. Noting what we heard in terms of this particular Green Street matter being with Main Roads, and we heard the concerns about the proposed roundabout, is there any advice that could be given around how those concerns might be best addressed and what a pathway forward for those concerns might be?
Through the chair, the project's currently being managed through Main Roads, and those concerns we can bring to their attention to ensure that accessibility and issues in addressing accessibility is primary and looked at through managing that traffic design. And I'm quite aware that the city has been bringing those matters to Main Roads' attentions as the design progresses and the pre-work has commenced.
Okay, do we have, I'm trying a second, does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, well, I'll put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. So then we'll move to 9.3, proposed Charles Hotel local development plan. Do we have a mover for that proposal? Moved, Councillor Greer. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Castle. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Xamon. I'm actually really excited about the prospect of improving this part of Charles Street. As the community feedback articulated, it's a site that's underutilised and is an eyesore, and it's such an opportunity to be able to think through such a significant plot of land of what we want the future of Charles Street to look like. I have heard the concern from the community about the traffic impact on streets like Eden Street, and my question to administration is, if this does progress, what are the opportunities available in the future for us to consider the impact on the local residents around this site?
Through you, Mayor Xamon. So if the LDP were to be approved, the next stage is for the applicant to submit a development application to redevelop the site. That would need to be accompanied by a more detailed traffic impact assessment that would look at the traffic generated from the combination of residential and non-residential uses and the impact that has on the surrounding road network, and a probably more detailed analysis of intersection specific. So that information would be assessed as part of the application, and if it didn't demonstrate that additional traffic could fit within the capacity of the surrounding road network, it would be available to the decision maker to refuse the application on that basis.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Given that it's my view that the LDP gives us a really suitable framework and a place to achieve our goal of having more housing so close to the city, and making sure that those residents have got excellent amenity and feel part of a community. And I'm looking forward to one day enjoying that part of Charles Street rather than being terrified trying to cross the road. It'll be very exciting.
Councillor Castle, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also support this officer recommendation. I feel like this might have been a very early thing that I did in my early days on council, is to attend Charles Hotel and hear about plans for an LDP. So it's very satisfying to see it finally coming to council. I do note that there's always concerns around these sorts of developments. It is a large site and there's an element of the unknown of what might be proposed within the framework of the LDP. I think that ultimately, no matter what we would have presented to us, it would have some traffic impact on the surrounding streets, obviously. And But I'm comfortable that that can be addressed in the next stage of the process in the development applications where, as we've heard, that more detailed traffic impact assessment will have to be considered. And it will be considered in the context of what is actually being proposed to be built on the site. So I think that what we're being presented with tonight is entirely appropriate for this stage of the process. And yes, I'm also looking forward to seeing what we can turn that very large block of land into.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Alexander.
I just wanted to pick up on the potential traffic issues, and I have a paper which was sent to all councillors from the Acting Manager of Strategic Planning, where he quotes that Ellesmere Street take a daily capacity of 6,000 vehicles, which was about 2 cars a minute, and refers in this particular paper that the city's accessible city strategy and Main Roads Department's functional road hierarchy identifies the capacity of each road based on a number of factors. I'd like to know what those factors are. And then it goes on to say, under this hierarchy, Ellesmere Street would be a local distributor road with the daily capacity up to 6,000 vehicles, which I think currently that's got 1,457, which is, you're talking about 3/4 more cars a day, which is, you know, what, something like about another 4,000, at least 4,500 cars a day. So I'd like to see in the traffic study where that's okay. That just seems many more cars to me. So I would like to see some more information in the traffic study, and also whether the council as a whole is happy with a street which previously has 1,457 supposedly a day going to 6,000. You know, I think we've got to consider whether that's okay or not. In my mind, not, but that's not every councillor.
Administration, would you like to respond?
Through you, Mayor Simon. So the Main Roads road hierarchy, when it looks at establishing an overall capacity for a road, essentially bases that off what the purpose of the road is. So there's a number of categories of road classification, and for a local distributor, which Ellesmere Street has been identified as, that is to essentially carry traffic between Charles Street and London Street. So that is a higher order road which would be reasonably expected to have more vehicle movements each day. When in the planning framework, when it is assessing traffic impacts, it looks at the overall capacity. So in this instance, the LDP that facilitates the redevelopment of the site wouldn't be expected to exceed that overall 6,000 vehicle capacity. And the DA that is submitted in the future would need to have that more detailed transport impact assessment, like we mentioned earlier, which would go down to a finer detail and look at specific intersections and what the impact of flow and safety on those are. And again, if that was to demonstrate that the overall capacity or the ability of intersections to cope with additional traffic wasn't acceptable, that would form a basis for a DA to be refused. Would also just point out that the LDP isn't, the issue for traffic isn't exclusive to the LDP. If the LDP weren't to be proposed or weren't to be supported, the owner could still seek to redevelop the site for a similar outcome, and that would need to go through a DA process, which would still need to consider traffic. So on the basis of the purpose of the LDP to provide a higher level planning guidance for the site and what has been provided through the traffic information today, administration is satisfied that the capacity, although there would be additional traffic, it wouldn't exceed the capacity of the road network, and there wouldn't be and impact on that.
So, Councillor Alexander, did you wish to conclude your remarks?
Yes, I do. I'm quite happy to go along with the local development plan, but I do believe that a DA is required, and to have a higher level of examination of traffic, and for that to be thoroughly examined by council, not just others coming to conclusions that it's okay to have 2 cars every minute going past.
Thank you. Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to say that I appreciate the need for a local development plan at this site for a coordinated and a consistent built form. The stakeholders, as well as the detailed submissions, did report that the current Charles Hotel site is an eyesore. It's subject to antisocial behaviour, and this local development plan is an opportunity to provide affordable housing and support the city to meet its infill targets along transit corridors and significant development sites, and as we've heard tonight, also create a small-scale high street. Also recognise the means more recently to address the perceived bulk and scale through the height being centrally located within and with increased setbacks at higher levels. So I'm also, though, very aware of the impact of the traffic, and agreeing with some of the comments made by councillors tonight, in particular with the Eaton and Ellesmere Street intersection. I think that's something that I look forward to looking at in more detail if a development application goes ahead. So in general, I'm supportive of the officer recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the community concerns about traffic impact and other issues are certainly something to be considered here, but whilst the capacity of the road is 6,000, at no suggestion are we saying there will be 6,000 cars on the road per day. The anticipated traffic for this development has not yet been established and would be subject to a traffic impact assessment and a development application. So all of those things cannot progress any further. For us to approve a local development plan, we are not fast tracking anything for a developer, as was suggested to me. The overwhelming community comment on this is that there is a desire to utilise this space, and the first step to doing that is to work on an LDP, I'm using the jargon, and then we can progress to a DA, which can then be considered by the JDAP. So I support the administration's recommendation on this.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't repeat previous comments, but I do support the officer's recommendation for these reasons. And I do feel like the requirement for a DA will be an important safeguard to mitigate some of the issues that have been raised by the community, particularly around traffic. The only new point I did want to add was around the context for this site and how much opportunity there is for increased density on Charles Street. I've said before that if we're not putting density on Charles Street, we really need to take a hard look at ourselves and what we're doing, particularly looking at this western side of North Perth. It's severed from the town centre by Charles Street. We've got local businesses around there who are struggling because there aren't people around there to support it. We've got a main road that goes directly into the city with high frequency public transport. So to have a coordinated approach now that can facilitate development at this site, I think is really important, and I look forward to seeing it. Thanks.
Any other councillors wish to speak to this item? I wish to make some comments. I'm very supportive of the recommendation to proceed with the LDP. I'm quite excited about what the options will be for this site. This is an area of Vincent which has been long neglected and really has needed some attention for quite some time. And I echo the comments made by Councillor Wolf that if we can't look at development, at density on these high volume corridors, where can we actually do it? Well, North Claysbrook's the answer to that, but that's an aside. So I'm very keen to see these sorts of placemaking developments proceed, and I think that the issues of increased traffic is one that is going to be faced as the city grows anyway. And in fact, what is being proposed here is quite modest in terms of potentially what could happen. So if anything, I think that it's going to be a very good outcome for local residents. And I think that as a build, it's also going to really value add to the area, and it helps us to ensure that more facilities are up this end, up that end of Vincent. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing it developed. I just hope that it doesn't get held back by the insane building costs that we're seeing with at the moment, which is unfortunately limiting so many developments from being able to proceed. So Councillor Greer, do you wish to say anything in conclusion? Okay, so I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, so that's passed unanimously. Thank you. So the next item, which requires an absolute majority decision, is 12.1, outcome of advertising and adoption of council members' continuing professional development policy. Do I have a mover for this proposal? Moved, Councillor Lafontaine. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wolf. Councillor Lafontaine, do you wish to speak to this? Councillor Wolf, do you wish to speak to this? Does any other councillor wish to speak to this? Okay, I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you very much, and that absolute majority has been achieved. So then we move to 17.1, which is the annual CEO performance review 2023-24 and key performance indicators 2024-25. This is a confidential matter, and so we now will be turning the live stream off. And we're going to be going behind closed doors to discuss this item, and then we'll be in the gallery, will need to be vacated. And so can I please have a mover and a seconder to go behind closed doors? So that's moved by Councillor Castle. To have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Alexander. I'm going to put that proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed. That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Councillor.